Many of us are growing increasingly weary of the incessant refrain that voting for RFK Jr. is an exercise in futility. It's disheartening to continually hear that our choices hold no significance in the grand scheme of things. Those who adamantly assert that Kennedy stands no chance are, in my view, missing the forest for the trees. They fail to grasp the deeper implications of our electoral decisions and the potential for change that lies within them. While I undoubtedly harbor hopes that Kennedy's victory might happen, my primary concern extends beyond the outcome of the election. What truly matters to me is not merely the triumph of one candidate, but rather the responsiveness of our political system to the needs and aspirations of its citizens. The pervasive dismissal of Kennedy's candidacy belies a broader discontent with the status quo and a yearning for genuine representation in the government. It's not simply about whether Kennedy wins or loses. It's about sending that resounding message to politicians that our voices cannot be ignored. I refuse to accept the premise that our votes are meaningless simply because they may not align with the prevailing political narrative. Instead, I see each vote as a small but significant step towards demanding accountability from our elected officials. Ultimately, what I desire is not a victory for Kennedy, but a fundamental shift in the way our political leaders engage and prioritize the concerns of ordinary citizens like myself. The Blue No Matter Who movement illuminated a disconcerting reality. Politicians took voters like me for granted. They wrongly assumed that individuals such as myself would blindly follow their lead, regardless of how far they strayed from common sense values. This complacency led them to pander to extremists, forsaking the needs of ordinary families like mine. They turned a blind eye to the erosion of middle-class savings due to inflation and allowed crime to fester unchecked in vulnerable communities. Moreover, they failed to address the assaults on our own police force by criminals from abroad. In essence, Democrats abandoned their commitment to representing my interests, leaving me feeling neglected and disenfranchised. Conversely, the prospect of supporting Trump is equally unpalatable. His divisive presence, attitude, and rhetoric have inflamed political divisions to the point where societal cohesion hangs by a thread. In this politically charged environment where animosity and polarization reign supreme, the idea of rallying behind Trump, well, for me, that's inconceivable. His tenure as president served as a catalyst for the deepening of the chasm between Americans and exacerbated social tensions, and undermined the very foundations of democracy, in my opinion. As a result, I find myself caught between two extremes, unable to align myself with either camp, and the stark polarization of American politics has left little room for these nuanced perspectives that I feel are important. And this forces individuals like myself to grapple with the troubling reality of the fractured society that we live in. So for those of you insisting that I am wasting my vote, I would ask, what am I supposed to do in this political quagmire? Keep settling for the lesser of two evils? Again? It's a disheartening cycle perpetuated by the belief that there is no viable alternative, and even if I do compromise and cast my vote for the lesser evil, what assurance do I have that the next election will offer a candidate who genuinely speaks to my priorities? It's a precarious gamble with no guarantees in sight. What I do know is that the establishment is continually trying to peddle fear in an attempt to sway my vote with scare tactics. But I've reached my limit with this mindset. As an independent voter, I belong to the largest political bloc in the United States, and it's high time for our collective voice to be heard loud and clear. My inclination towards common sense and centrist policies doesn't make my priorities dull or insignificant. On the contrary, they are fundamental to building a successful nation that serves the interests of all its citizens. I refuse to prioritize being on the winning team over doing what I firmly believe is right, fair, and in the best interests of my children and their futures. If Kennedy doesn't emerge victorious, I won't succumb to the sense of defeat that's portrayed by the media conglomerates. Instead, I'll see it as an opportunity to further galvanize the support for candidates like RFK Jr. The sheer number of RFK supporters that will be turning out will be a force to be reckoned with. Their presence will compel future presidents and politicians to acknowledge the power and influence of independent voters and perhaps inspire them to adopt a more moderate approach if they aim to win elections in the future. This is democracy in action, and it's imperative that my voice, along with millions of other independent voters, is not only heard but heeded. By voting for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I'm not wasting my vote. I'm exercising my democratic right to shape the future of my country. It's a statement, a declaration of unwavering commitment to principles of fairness, equity, and inclusivity. With enough support for the candidates like Kennedy, the political landscape will undergo a transformative shift towards greater representation and responsiveness to the needs of the majority. It's time for a paradigm shift in our political discourse, one that values moderation, collaboration, and the collective welfare above partisan divisiveness. And that's precisely why I stand by my decision to support RFK Jr. as my future president.